Welcome to Vision to Venture, the podcast where we talk to leaders in the tech world. In each episode, we chat with entrepreneurs, tech experts, and leaders within the tech space to hear their stories. So, if you're curious about tech, starting a business, or just want to hear inspiring stories, this podcast is for you. Make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Let's get started. Welcome to Vision to Venture. Today, we're excited to welcome back Jonas Menesklou, the CEO and co-founder of AskUI. In Jonas's last appearance on Vision to Venture, he actually explored the early days of AskUI and the challenges of building a startup. So today we'll be discussing Jonas's vision for 2025, the predicted rise of automation, and its implications on the workforce. So if you haven't already checked out the last podcast that Jonas was in, please do check that out. It's on all podcast streaming platforms at the moment. So yeah, hi, welcome back, Jonas. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I'm good. I'm very well. Thank you. Yeah.
Good, perfect. So for those who actually missed the first podcast, can you share a little brief summary on the story of how AskUI was actually founded? As I believe it was during the COVID-19 pandemic. So how did the challenges of that time shape your initial approach into that?
Yeah, for sure. It's a crucial moment in the history of AskUI, yeah, obviously. So we were studying at university, and me and my co-founder, it was back in 2019, like the start of the pandemic, actually. And we decided to do something in the, today you would call it like AI agent space. We call it back then like automation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we started directly during that pandemic and then just like said, okay, we wanted to start a company. If you listen to the first podcast, you already know what we do. In short, we automate repetitive work with AI models, basically. And yeah, so we had this challenge that it was not allowed to have an office. So back then we were forced to build a remote working culture. So which started, like we only started with two people, which is then fine, I guess. But we also got during this time, like we incorporated companies, hired our first engineers, and we were forced from day one to actually enforce a culture which is like remote first,
Yeah.
as we had to hire people remote, which was like we just didn't have the option to have someone in the office back then.
Yeah, no, that's interesting actually. So you've obviously mentioned you initially adopted that sort of remote first culture. So, I mean, what have been sort of the pros and cons of actually building a team with members that you've got kind of working across all different parts of Germany and possibly elsewhere? But have there been any sort of specific sort of pros and
Yeah,
cons of that?
yeah, definitely. So I think like one of the main, we didn't really realize back then until we tried to get someone back into the office, but like in the initial days we could hire like from anywhere in the world. So when we were doing our first outreach campaigns for the first hires, we didn't look at like where they are located at all. Like it didn't bother us. So it was all around Germany. So we had a large pool of actually talent available because we just had to hire them remote. So we didn't look like where are they located. And it was like not the questions that they can work from home. So that was definitely very good because we managed to get like very, very good first hires, which helped a lot. A bit of the downside, which we realized, is then after like the COVID pandemic, we had the office, we had our first office, and we wanted to do more work in person because like everyone was moving back into office, everyone was eager to meet each other again, and we also wanted to have like more of a kind of an office culture because of course it's like easier to pivot, to give like to teach different kind of concepts. There's like this small talk going on, and those are all kind of benefits. But we then realized, okay, we have a remote first culture. It's not possible for us to get like people back into office, and so we just stuck with this remote culture, but also have an office. So it was quite a challenge to get everything aligned there, so that people can work from home, others can join the office, and how do you manage that? So, I mean, it's still an ongoing topic, I would say, for us,
Yeah.
but yeah, that is.
This episode is sponsored by Enigma. Enigma help connect machine learning and software engineering talent with groundbreaking opportunities in the field of AI. So, whether you're a company searching for exceptional tech talent or an individual seeking that perfect role, Enigma is your go-to solution. Thank you to Enigma for sponsoring Vision to Venture. Yeah, I was going to ask. So obviously you're remote first. That's you kind of like I think you were said you were sort of forced into that, I really, with being pandemic sort of focus. I mean, there's a lot of big companies at the moment which you see things going on about how they, they trust their colleagues, they're happy with being sort of more remote first at the moment. Do you feel like it's something that you will continue to do just because it allows you to have the better talent, like you've mentioned? And do you see that being sort of an ongoing thing for the foreseeable?
Yeah, I think so. I I do believe if you start as an in-person company, like with an in-office culture, it's very hard to get like a remote culture going.
Yeah.
But the other way around, like if you start with a remote first culture, it's also very hard to get back into office, but it's very easy to continue with this remote first culture. That's what we realized. I also do believe at some point in your journey, employees will want to have an office because they have a small flat or something. They are living together with kids or something like that. So they want to leave actually their home to be somewhere else. So you need to be able to give them that workspace or that workplace. But it doesn't need to be like one central office where everyone's going towards to.
Yeah, no,
So
that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, in the the area of work you do, I think it's obviously very possible for people to set up those in-home offices, isn't it? And actually carry on and do their work to the highest ability, even by not being in an office. So there's definitely perks to both. I think we could talk about that forever, but we'll go on to the next bit. So in terms of you, obviously, with your position, being CEO and co-founder at AskUI, how has your sort of leadership style evolved since you actually first co-founded the company? Particularly during sort of periods of actually rapid growth or sort of funding challenges.
yeah. So in the beginning, you do everything. So I think about it that way. So a company or a startup has like a different set of functions which you need to cover. This can be like it's basically all the functions a large corporation also has, like it's legal, finance. You need to do some bookkeeping, you need to do sales, you need to do marketing, you need to do like development. And what I like to think about, like when you start a company, is like to look at all these functions. And when you're just starting with your co-founder, you two have to cover all these functions. So you have to lay down, okay, these are the specific functions you need to cover. Which person is doing what? And the more co-founders, the more you can split, and the more focus on specific areas you can be. And then during your journey, you start to unwrap those functions and you want to give them away. So you think like I thought about like, okay, what is the first function I can give actually to another person, which is like not, I don't need to be doing this. And typically for a early stage company, like legal and like HR, like HR is really important. I would not give this away too easily, but like because you want to hire the best person. So this is like CEO job. So don't give away this, but like finance, for example, or legal stuff, there's lawyers, there's agencies. It's like very limited in the beginning. So you can give this, outsource this, and then you start leading people. And like the most important functions is obviously like development.
Mm,
So this is like the first hires you have to do because you need the capacity. And then you start leading a team of developers, more of my co-founder. Then you start with sales, and then you develop from like, okay, I do sales all myself. I now want to hire people for sales. So I don't have to do anymore the discovery calls, the demo calls, all that kind of stuff, because you want to scale out yourself. And this is only possible if you hire people and then start managing on top of it. So yeah, I would say like in short, look at the functions you have. Which one do you want? Like, where do you want to hire people first? Mainly development, then sales, and then you start growing into more of kind of a person leadership role instead of like in the beginning where you try to understand everything your own.
yeah, I guess it's all about sort of what's the priority for you at that time, isn't it? And then, with growth and the growth of your company, you can sort of give those tasks to people like you've said and leave yourself with the things that you need to be doing. I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's, yeah, no, that's fair enough. And in terms of sort of 2025, obviously you spoke last year on this podcast a little bit about this as well, but in terms of sort of artificial intelligence in general, what specific trends or advancements do you actually anticipate for this year that might change?
Yeah, actually, when I think back to, I'm not exact, I don't exactly remember what I said, but I think AI developments moved quicker than I expected it to be. I think this is one of the key things. So um, for 2025, so what we've seen this year is mainly, I think, a lot of text generation, a lot of like content generation, the models got really good. If like in like writing stuff, we've seen like outbound SDRs, AI agent stuff. I think like this year will be more of kind of a year of actually bringing AI agents to productions because like I've seen the AI agents which are currently very successful, they cover a very specific set of actions which do not really have like a lot in common with like the rest of the company. So it's like purely outbound sales, but that's a very specific function of a company where you don't need to have like access to the rest of the company structure and infrastructure and stuff like that. I think 2025 will be the year where we see AI agents moving into the core infrastructure of companies and have a central role there in doing certain kind of automation tasks. And those tasks mainly being, I think, like document understanding, document automation will be a huge thing, which will be kind of solved. It is already kind of. And I do think everything which is like clicking through user interfaces is, I mean, that's what we are working on, but like I see a lot of people trying to automate those gathering information, going specific queries on Google, researching specific stuff, all that kind of stuff, where you have like a natural language description, give it to someone, he does the task and reports you back. I think those kind of jobs will be automated in 2025.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, obviously, what you guys do is very automation focused, and you've predicted a large rise in kind of automation work as well on the whole. But I mean, do you think there are any key industries or specific job roles that will be impacted first or impacted sort of more?
Yeah, so I think like all back office jobs. So if you think of automation in the future, I mean, I like to divide into like blue collar, white collar work. I mean, that's a specific terminology. I think like all these research jobs, like analysts, for example, all these white collar back office jobs where you have like a specific set of actions, which is based on like, hey, do this kind of research, hey, enter this kind of data into this kind of application. All those white collar jobs where it's only working on specific applications in a company. I think they will be automated first because you can keep everything in a digital structure. So it's like basically it's connecting applications with each other. And I think you can do this very well with specific technologies, and large language models or AI in general is very good in understanding applications, data, and performing different kind of tasks. Yeah. However, I think the first task which will be automated from the sense will be like tasks which are not super critical, because there are like research tasks, for example, because like super deterministic tasks where it's really critical that everything is 100% correct. I think companies still struggle a bit with the accuracy of the models.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, you've kind of mentioned the whole sort of white collar jobs versus the blue collar jobs as well. And you feel like the white collar jobs will be automated first. I mean, you've gone into it a little bit, but in terms of elaborating on, do you think that's purely because they're easier to do? Or do you think there's more sort of work to be done when it comes to maybe automating the blue collar jobs?
Yeah. I like to think so there's just more complexity. So if you think of like a robot which has to like control a computer, I think there's different kind of layers which you need to solve. So for example, think of like a white collar job. What does he really do? So like he needs to understand like natural language. His task, for example, research. The task would be research company X, I don't know, research company X, and give me a competition like paper about it. So that's a task. So what do you actually need to automate that? So you need something which understands this natural language prompt. This can do like a large language model. Then you need something which can actually do the task, like interfere with the application, with the search engine, go there and extract the information. For that, like I think vision language models can be really good at like looking at the screen and finding things what they want to do, or you have like API connections where you can where the language model can understand the API. And then you need something like a controller controlling the computer itself, like the mouse and the keyboard for performing the task. And this is all very digital within a computer. So we have all the technology to do that. But if you look at like a blue collar work, which is actually there's another layer of complexity. You also need to understand the language. You also need a way to see the world, but the world is not digital. It's not a screen. Now the world is like our real world. So you need to like really understand all the real world data, so really eyes of a human to understand what's happening. And then you also need to perform tasks. Like, and this task performing is not only clicking on a button, like moving mouse there and performing an action. It's like it's 3D basically. So you move from a 2D complexity of like actions into a real world 3D complexity of actions, where you also need to control hardware. There's an arm and like there's different kind of stuff involved for grabbing something. How hard can you grab? There's force involved and all that kind of stuff. And this adds so much complexity that it just takes longer to automate.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I mean, do you actually think there'll be any sort of implications of this trend, and what, what it might actually mean for different, the workforce, in companies because of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will see more layoffs or like a
Okay.
more
Yeah.
pessimistic like hiring market out there. I think we see this already.
Mm.
I do think this will not be forever. I think we have a switch of like the profiles we want to hire right now. So, for example, we already started to look into what kind of profiles do we actually want to hire in the future. I think like you want to have more people being viable with prompting, understand how AI models work, understand how to instruct AI models to perform different kind of tasks instead of like people receiving a task and executing that work. So I think there's a switch going on here, or a change going on. Um, I do think that blue collar work will not be too much affected as of right now, but I think like depending on how fast the AI developments will be, and they are very quick, I think we will see something like in not in 2025, but maybe in 2026, where we start to maybe replace the first blue collar jobs as well with like automation.
That's interesting. You think it could be sort of as soon as then? Because I know it's kind of endless, really, isn't it? The possibilities of AI as a whole and what it could lead, companies to be able to do. It's interesting to see when you think it might start making more kind of serious changes. Obviously, it's been very impactful so far, but I mean, is there anything in particular that you think businesses, such as yourself, or even, the society as a whole, should be doing to sort of adapt to these changes? Is there anything, that you guys have learned as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough question because like it's very
Yeah.
hard to say, but I do believe that it's like not a good thing to just like hate on technology, if you could frame it that way. Like just say, okay, I see like sometimes there's really the fear of people being automated, and that's the reason why they are against this technology. And there's also like this blocker mentality where you think, okay, my job is in danger. I need to never look at the technology and I'm afraid of actually touching it because of the implications it could have on myself, which I think is like it's a very bad take to do it like this. I think if you like right now is the right time to try to learn the technology, like to understand what it actually can do and to try to understand what implications it does have for yourself as a job, and then you can adapt with it or grow with it. There will be a need for people using AI models. There will be a need for people still overseeing AI models. So I think that will be like there will be a switch from or change from execution to overseeing stuff. And if you understand them, if you know how to instruct and how to prompt, I think you're in a better position to um, yeah, have a better role or chance in the future.
No, that's really interesting actually. And I mean, just keeping on the topic of sort of AI and how you think it's going to change things. I mean, do you see there being anything that might get in the way, of sort of that might affect the pace of sort of AI and its, automation adoption? Is there anything that you might come up with government factors, anything else that you can think of? And, what changes would you actually sort of advocate for within that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's this huge discussion about like EU regulation going on, like the AI Act and all that kind of stuff. Um, what do you think about it? I think we should not regulate things which we don't understand yet completely. So, for example, like in Europe, we started regulating AI very heavily. Of course, like the public the public voice is like it's not that bad, it's like for the better, and all that, but it still adds complexity to developing stuff, and you don't know yet what really is affected by it. So I think it's not good to have regulation in place when we don't even have like AI systems in production yet. So I think it makes more sense to give like researchers and developers more freedom to just build stuff. And then if we really understand the implications of this, which I think we do not do this yet. I don't think we are there yet where we really can understand like all the implications. Until then, you should not or be very limited with regulation. Yeah, so I have this fear that we regulate too much on that space. And I have the fear that we lose talent in Europe because of this, because I see a lot of founders actually switching over to the US or other countries. And yeah, I mean, it's a tough take. I don't really know what the best approach would be, because like sometimes you need to regulate, but I just think more freedom helps in general.
That makes sense. And I think obviously it's there's a lot to it, but I think people are obviously scared of the unknown, aren't they? And there's so many things that aren't understood or known. I think people can sometimes run away from that when they don't necessarily need to. And I think what you've explained there is that there needs to be more chance for people to actually go in and do the research on it, to see how it can be beneficial. And sort of on a final note, then, in that view, more of a deep question, but how do you think sort of AI and automation might actually be able to kind of reshape the world? And what do you think the best approaches are to actually navigate these challenges? If you're going to give a final point on that.
Yeah, so I hope actually that we see more automation. I hope that more jobs will be replaced by AI. I do believe that. I don't want people to be like, I don't think it's a good thing to think about like, oh, I won't have a job anymore, then I don't earn money. I think we need a new like structure for our society if we are able to automate everything. So basically, what I mean by that, I think we can create our basic economic values, or like the basic industry which we need to feed ourselves. Basically, I think we can automate all of that
Wow.
already. And if we would do this, I think we could create economic value, which we could then use for different kind of other things. I think people should not need to work on jobs which just involves around like clicking buttons or performing some set of actions a machine could do. And I think it's not a good thing to try to keep those jobs alive just because then people have jobs. I think it's better to try to move to a society where we try to automate as much as possible. So we have like a baseline of economic value just automatically generated. And then everything which is on top, like we can feed everyone, everyone has like a basic income. And then on top, you can start doing work which you want to do actually. And maybe this leads to a world where we don't think about work as we do right now, because like I see a lot of people thinking about work in the sense of okay, work is for earning money, it's my income, and then there's my spare time which I can spend my money on. Maybe this allows us to create a world where we think of work like we don't need the term work anymore. It's just like spare time, it's just like do what you want to do, and everything else is like automatically generated.
That's an absolute crazy thought, isn't it? It could lead towards
It is, but I think it's possible. I don't know. Maybe I'm too optimistic about it,
Oh,
but
I
that
love that you think that's possible. I think that would be a really amazing way to use this technology, so people have more time to do things, that they don't have at the moment. Like you said, everyone spends so much of their time working. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but with automation, you could see a massive change in that, couldn't you?
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, thank you for that. That was really interesting. I think you've got some really amazing sort of thoughts and ideas and views that hopefully people will find really interesting as well. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll get you back on for a third time next year to see how you're getting on then. But yeah, no, it's been really fantastic having this podcast chat with you again. It's been great to have you back on. And yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from tech leaders.